Outside of this channel, I am a massive basketball fan. My favorite team is the Denver Nuggets, but if you followed mainstream NBA coverage, you would barely know they exist, even though they've been one of the NBA's best teams all season. One of the reasons given for this lack of coverage, according to journalists like Sports Illustrated's Chris Mannix, is that the Denver Nuggets are not an interesting team. That's ridiculous. It is not the job of the subject to give you the story. It is your job as a writer to find the story in the subject. Everything has a story, but especially people, and even more especially, groups of them. Any story is interesting if you're a good enough writer to present it well, but you wouldn't know that if you only followed mainstream NBA coverage. All you get there is LeBron slop and rage bait takes. The Nuggets made the Western Conference Finals in the most uncomfortable playoff environment in league history after being the only team to come back from two 1-3 deficits in the same playoff run. Then lost 2 seasons of title contention due to their second and third best players being injured, and are now at the top of the NBA mountain with a 42nd overall pick as their best player, and that's just scratching the surface. For a major sports writer to call that an uninteresting team is disgusting. So that's why this video exists, to prove that I can write about fake monsters better than most of these glorified NBA gossip columnists can write about real people. I'll be taking a very boring Pokémon and showing you why it's actually very interesting. Now yes, it would be much easier for me to make a slop video on why Charizard is not the GOAT, or Mewtwo's latest trade request, but I don't hate myself enough to do that. Now, finding a subject for this video wasn't easy, unlike it would be for Chris Mannix, who just had to look at the top of the Western Conference all year and think, I should see what's going on with the number 1 seed. In my case, I've got over 1,000 Pokemon to consider, and defining boring isn't exactly a stone-cold science. When I asked my followers on Twitter and subscribers on YouTube, I was met with answers like Carnivine and Unown. Competitively worthless Pokemon, yes, but they have too many notable appearances in other Pokemon media to consider them boring by my standards. Then there's Lumineon, who actually rose into relevancy after people kept calling it the most forgotten Pokemon. I wanted a Pokemon who had the perfect combination of competitive irrelevancy and little fanfare. One of my followers helped me find exactly that with Spidops. Visually, it's not great at first glance. It looks like a mid-game swarm enemy from a bad PS1 game nobody remembers. It reminds me of Drapion, whose design was panned for years because it looks like a bunch of circles just smushed together. With Spidops, it looks like they jabbed sticks into a rectangle and called it a day. But we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Dare we emulate the NBA media, who for years cast off Nugget star Nikola Jokic as just a fat European. We're going to treat this weird-looking Pokemon with respect, and actually see what it has to offer. Let's start by giving its design a second chance. The green on its chest can be seen as resembling a protective vest worn by special forces, while the deep black around its eyes looks similar to night vision goggles. In its shiny form, its web turns a bright red, as if being modeled after infrared lasers. Its Scarlet Pokédex entry talks about it being a silent assassin, taking out prey before they realize they're in danger. The motif matches its name. Spidops, Spy Ops. But of course, there's also an animal inspiration in this Pokemon, coming from the spider species Deinopaidae, stick-like spiders that utilize night vision to cast their webs in low-light environments much more effectively than other spiders. A subcategory of this family are ogre-faced spiders, which is where we see the inspiration for Spidops pressing its extremities together in pairs. In keeping with ogres, it's also possible that Spidops' design took inspiration from a race of trap-setting demon spiders in Japanese folklore known as Tsuchigomo, who were said to have the faces of ogres and the bodies of spiders. So yeah, this Pokemon I thought looked boring a few minutes ago actually has some varied inspirations that it shows off really well. All it took to figure that out was asking and digging. What's stopping paid national sports writers from doing that with Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets as a whole? Asking why they're doing so well, and then actually watching the games to figure it out. Spidops' base stat total of 404 is the lowest of any fully evolved Pokemon introduced in Generation 9, but what it lacks in stats, it doesn't make up for elsewhere. In Smogon's tiering system, it doesn't do much of anything, and there's little hope that it will ever be relevant in VGC. But when you look at its move pool, there was clearly effort taken to give it a role. Spidops is the only Pokemon that can learn both Spikes and Sticky Web, two very useful entry hazards, and it's got access to a variety of moves that help it elsewhere. This includes its signature move Silk Trap, a variation of Protect that lowers the opponent's speed if they use a contact move against it. Silk Trap is the 5th variation of Protect to have a secondary effect on contact. The trend began in Generation 6, with Chestnut's Spiky Shield and Aegislash's King's Shield, and we've received a new one in each generation since. Spidops' move pool seems perfect for being a bulky supportive annoyance, with healing moves like Leech Life, and priority moves like First Impression and Sucker Punch to bypass its bad speed. Its abilities are also very helpful, whether it's being immune to the sleep status with Insomnia, or punishing switch-ins with Stakeout. The only competitive fault with this Pokemon is its stats. They are built to do nothing. While it's got good defenses, its HP and physical attack hold it back from being a quality mid-tier support Pokemon, and instead leave it as a Pokemon that can neither take hits nor dish them out. Instead of 60 HP and 79 attack, having 95 HP and 99 attack would give it some staying power to go along with its unique combination of support moves. We've actually never seen what a bulky, mono-type bug Pokemon could do in competitive. Spidops is one of only 6 fully evolved bug Pokemon without a secondary typing, and that number drops to just 3 when only including Pokemon with pre-evolved forms. This is despite bug being the 6th most common type. And while you wouldn't necessarily think defense when it comes to bug types, they do resist 2 of the most common offensive types, ground and fighting. I can't think of another Pokemon that has been held back in competitive play exclusively because of its stats. Spidops has everything else needed to be pretty solid, so it's really weird how they handled this part. Being so new to the series, Spidops has yet to make any anime or manga appearances, though it already has 3 cards, including an EX card and a Black Star promo. Bug Pokemon Black Star promo cards are surprisingly rare across the sets. In the first run of Black Star promos, Scizor was the only bug type that got a card, and the next 2 rounds of Black Star promos didn't have any bug Pokemon. EX cards of bug Pokemon are equally uncommon across the years, with Scizor and Genesect making up the vast majority of them. Genesect was the newest bug Pokemon to have an EX card until Spidops, despite the cards always being part of new expansions, and there being multiple very popular bug Pokemon in the following generations. The illustrations for Spidops' EX cards were done by 2 illustrators. The more common versions were done by Takayao, who joined the TCG during Fusion Strike. The special print of the EX card had its illustration done by Miki Tanaka, who's been doing card art for Pokemon since the 1997 Fossil expansion. Spidops was the first bug Pokemon Tanaka did art for since Dark Explorer's Joltik all the way back in 2011. The TCG seems to have a lot of faith that Spidops will grow in popularity, giving it 2 distinctive card variations that other bug Pokemon could only dream of, even fan favorites like Vivillon and Volcarona. Now, was it a bit tedious to look through every EX card and every Black Star promo card to find all of the bug types? Yeah, kinda. But they're also notable parts of Pokemon's TCG history, and it was fascinating to see how little bug Pokemon get to be part of them. Another noteworthy aspect of Spidops is that it's one of the few non-legendary Pokemon to have a rivalry with another Pokemon. We first saw non-legendary rivals in Gen 3 with Seviper and Zangoose, and then again in Gen 5 with Heatmor and Durant. Wrong Durant, I've heard enough about that one. Moving on, with Spidops, we get our first instance of a rivalry between Pokemon of different generations. Spidops feuds with Scyther, who's been with Pokemon since the first generation and is still one of the most popular bug types. This is only the second instance of rival Pokemon having different base stat totals, and it's also the largest gap. Mew and Mewtwo have an 80-point difference, while Spidops and Scyther have a 96-point difference, meaning Spidops is really punching above its weight here. There, I just spoke for 8 minutes on a Pokemon that I thought looked boring as sin upon first glance. Those 8 minutes are actually more than some NBA reporters have admitted to watching the Denver Nuggets all season. Nothing is boring if you go into it thinking you can find interest in it. It's all about perspective, and as a writer, your job is to craft the viewer's perspective. If there isn't already a narrative, you have all the control to create one. Before I made this video, I didn't know Spidops was a Pokemon. My only experience with Generation 9 Pokemon are the ones that are top tier on Smogon. But since I wanted to create a narrative around it, I found one, because that's what writers do. You find stories in everything. I made Spidops seem interesting for free. If you are a paid NBA writer who can't find something to write about the Denver Nuggets, you should be fired, honestly. You could put me on the beat for the NBA's worst G League team, and I could find something interesting to write about. But so much of NBA media nowadays is tabloid bullshit. Like, oh, is LeBron gonna retire? Of course he's fucking not, and that was obvious from the moment he brought it up. Now cover the team that just swept his ass to make their first NBA Finals in franchise history. If you enjoyed this video, I've made similar Spotlight videos for other Pokemon, along with Spotlight episodes on indie and handheld fighting games. I also do a series called Diaries of a Beginner, where I attempt to learn Guilty Gear Plus R from scratch. I wanted to believe that I could learn how to get good at fighting games if I went about it the right way, that these games weren't some uncrackable code. Turns out, they're not. And if you'd like to see my journey from zero to solid, you can check out the playlist on the right. Writing is a beautiful thing, and you can craft stories around anything. I hope this video has proven as much.